In 2006, you could be tracked to your front door just by looking at someone's MySpace profile. No clicks required, no downloads, no suspicious links. Just one invisible pixel, one line of code, hidden between the glittery backgrounds and autoplay music. That single pixel turned social media pages into surveillance cameras. And for 15 women in Washington state, it turned friend requests into death sentences. This is how an algorithm selected them for elimination. An algorithm that calculated who would be missed, who would be believed, who would be worth the risk. And in 2016, 5 years after the killer's arrest, the algorithm would select one more name, because nobody had told it to stop. Detective Marcus Reeves stared at his monitor in the dimly lit cold case office. The blue glow reflected off his reading glasses. The hum of the tower beside his desk. The smell of old coffee and stale air conditioning. It was 2011. MySpace had been dead for years. Everyone had moved to Facebook. But this profile was still active. The account belonged to a 19-year-old woman who disappeared in 2006. 5 years gone. Presumed dead. Case filed away with the others. But someone had logged into her account yesterday, and the day before that, and every single day for the past 5 years. Reeves pulled the login history. The IP addresses traced back to public libraries across Washington state. Tacoma, Olympia, Federal Way. Someone was moving around. Careful, never the same location twice in a row. A dead girl's MySpace profile, active every day for 5 years. Someone was still logging in. Someone was watching. This wasn't a cold case. This was a live investigation. But to understand how Reeves caught him, we have to go back. Back to when the hunting started. Rainy suburbs and dial-up dreams, Washington State, 2006. The I-5 corridor between Tacoma and Olympia. Rain-soaked suburbs where MySpace was everything for anyone under 25. Your profile was your identity. Custom HTML backgrounds, autoplay music, glittering graphics. You accepted friend requests from anyone with mutual friends. That's how the scene worked. That's how you proved you belonged. Nobody was watching the internet. Not the parents still anxious about old crimes. Not the police taking missing persons reports. Nobody understood that accepting a friend request could turn your computer into a surveillance camera. Sarah was 19 years old, worked the closing shift at a coffee shop near Joint Base Lewis McChord. Her MySpace profile was her lifeline. She posted her work schedule so friends knew when to stop by. She shared photos from hiking trails around Mount Rainier. Someone was watching, and Sarah was scoring points in an algorithm she didn't know existed. Every detail on her profile was being evaluated. Every post analyzed. Every vulnerability calculated. Friend count 42. That's plus 3 points. Small enough network to avoid immediate detection if she disappeared. Work schedule posted publicly. Plus 3 points. Predictable routines make surveillance easier. Photos geotagged to specific hiking trails. Plus 4 points. Location services enabled means trackable patterns. Last login, 1:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Plus 2 points. Late night activity suggests she lives alone. Sarah's risk score just hit 16. She's now a priority target. But Sarah wasn't the first name in the spreadsheet. 3 weeks earlier, someone else had scored 17. A nursing student named Amanda, who fostered anxious shelter dogs. She'd already been eliminated, and the system was just getting started. By the time investigators realized what they were looking at, 15 women would be dead, and the person hunting them would be watching from inside the investigation itself. Sarah didn't know she'd just been flagged. She was scrolling through friend requests, accepting profiles that looked legitimate. Each click adding her to a database she couldn't see. She thought she was building a social network. She was actually populating a kill list. When she didn't show up for her shift on a Tuesday in October, her manager called her roommate. The roommate checked her room. Bed made, laptop open on her desk. MySpace still logged in. Her last MySpace bulletin posted at 11:47 p.m. the night before. New friend took me to the coolest abandoned spot for photos. Posting pics tomorrow. She never posted the photos. In the 2 weeks before she vanished, Sarah had accepted 47 new friend requests. Local bands, party promoters, photographers, all with fewer than 20 friends, but dozens of mutual connections, all playing the same distorted indie track. Scratchy, unsettling, the aesthetic of authenticity. They weren't just friend requests. They were surveillance cameras. Each profile embedded with tracking code, logging every visit, every click, every moment spent browsing those fake pages. Nobody noticed the pattern yet. Nobody was checking for tracking pixels. Nobody understood that the MySpace pages themselves had become the weapon. The first disappearance, autumn 2006. The local investigation focused on the obvious suspects. The ex-boyfriend who kept showing up at her work. The coworker who'd asked her out 3 times. The regular customer who always requested her section. Nobody looked at her computer. While Sarah was at work, pouring coffee and memorizing orders, a notification appeared on a monitor in a darkened room. New visitor, IP 47.156.23.108. Location, Tacoma, Washington, 98404. Time on page, 8 minutes 34 seconds. Return visit, yes, 3rd time this week. The IP address was copied, pasted into a geolocation tool. The map zoomed in. A residential neighborhood near Joint Base Lewis McChord. A cluster of apartment buildings. One of them was Sarah's. The cursor moved to a spreadsheet. Clicked on row 1. Friend count, 42. Work schedule, posted publicly. Last login, 1:47 a.m. Location data, enabled. Risk score, 16. The cursor hovered over the status column, then typed, priority target. Sarah wouldn't check her MySpace again for another 6 hours. By then, the decision had already been made. The MySpace pages were still bright then, still optimistic. The profiles looked like what they were supposed to be, digital scrapbooks of people's lives. Nobody noticed the code hiding in plain sight. She thought she was building connections. She was actually walking into a trap that had been set with 47 different entry points, each one calibrated to look legitimate, trustworthy, safe. The bulletin about the coolest abandoned spot was her last communication with the outside world. A message had arrived about a photography location, professional, enthusiastic, from a profile with mutual friends she recognized. She went alone, brought her camera, excited about the photos she'd post the next day. Her car was found 3 days later in a gravel lot off Highway 7. Keys still in the ignition, camera bag on the passenger seat. No signs of struggle. The investigation went cold within weeks. No physical evidence, no witnesses, no leads that went anywhere. But those 47 friend requests would become the key to understanding everything that came next. By the time investigators realized what they meant, Sarah had been dead for 5 years, and her MySpace profile was still logging in every single day. Reeves stared at the archived profile page, seeing what investigators missed 5 years ago. The friend requests were still visible in cache data. All 47 accounts, all created within the same 2-week window in September 2006, all containing the same invisible code. He pulled the HTML source from the Internet Archive. Line 847, between closing div tags. A single image tag, 1 pixel by 1 pixel, pointing to an external server domain. A tracking pixel, the kind of code marketing companies used to monitor email opens and website visits. Invisible to the human eye. But every time someone loaded the profile, their browser automatically reached out to fetch that tiny image. That connection logged everything: IP address, timestamp, location data, browser fingerprint. Here's what that single line of code actually does. In 2006, when you customized your MySpace profile, you had access to raw HTML. Most people use this to add glittery backgrounds and autoplay music. Someone used it to build surveillance cameras. The code looks like this: an image tag with a source URL pointing to an external server. The image dimensions are set to 1 pixel by 1 pixel, invisible to the human eye. But when your browser loads the page, it automatically tries to fetch that image. It sends a request to the external server saying, "I need this file." That request is the tripwire. The server doesn't actually return an image. It logs your information instead. What gets recorded? Your IP address, which in 2006 could be geolocated to specific neighborhoods. The exact timestamp, down to the second. Your browser type, which can create a unique fingerprint. How long you stayed on the page, measured by repeated requests. Sarah didn't click anything, didn't download anything, didn't enter any information. She just looked at a profile. And the surveillance began. MySpace had no idea this was happening. The tracking occurred on external servers, outside the platform's infrastructure, outside their jurisdiction, outside law enforcement's immediate reach. 1 pixel, 1 view, complete surveillance. Friend requests from secondary profiles created the illusion of mutual friends. People trusted profiles their friends had already friended. Elegant social engineering. And unlike MySpace's servers, which law enforcement could eventually access with a warrant, these external servers were registered anonymously through proxy services, hosted in Eastern Europe, completely outside the jurisdiction of local police. By early 2007, the tracker network had logged over 3,000 unique IP addresses across Western Washington. This wasn't random hunting. This was database building. Someone had the technical knowledge to build this. The question was, who? And more importantly, where were they now? The pattern emerges winter 2006 to 2007. By January 2007, 3 more young women had disappeared from Pierce and Thurston counties. 8 weeks, 3 victims, all active MySpace users. All last seen after meeting a friend from online. The media framed it exactly how you'd expect. MySpace danger, parents warned about online predators. School districts started blocking social networking sites. Parents deleted their kids' profiles. The platform became the villain. Local task forces formed. They compared physical evidence, tire tracks in parking lots, witness descriptions of a normal-looking guy, CCTV footage that never quite captured a clear face. Amanda was 21, studied veterinary science at Pierce College. Her profile showcased photos of shelter dogs she fostered. The algorithm was evaluating her. Friend count, 38. Plus 3 points. Profile bio listed her class schedule at Pierce College, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Plus 3 points for publicly posted routines. Recent relationship status change, single, as of November 15th. Plus 2 points, reduced social oversight. Login patterns, consistent activity between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Plus 2 points for late-night isolation indicators. Amanda's risk score, 17. Priority target confirmed. In December 2006, a profile called Pacific Animal Rescue Network sent her a friend request. Professional layout, photos of adoption events, dozens of mutual friends from local animal welfare groups. The profile's music player loaded automatically. That same distorted indie track, scratchy, unsettling, perfect for the underground aesthetic. She accepted. 2 days later, a message about volunteering at a weekend adoption drive. She told her roommate she'd be back by dinner. Her car was found in a Walmart parking lot in Puyallup. Engine still warm, her volunteer badge for the shelter on the dashboard. Nicole disappeared in January. Jessica in February. Jessica was 20, community college student studying photography. She shared her grandmother's immigration stories on her MySpace, building a visual oral history. Hundreds of hours of recorded interviews, photos spanning decades. Her younger sister knew the password to her account. They'd shared it since high school, back when they'd help each other with homework. In February 2007, Jessica was just another missing woman in a growing stack of cold cases. Both followed the same pattern: professional-looking profiles, mutual friends, messages about opportunities that aligned perfectly with their interests. The detective who first noticed the connection was reviewing case files late one night. All 4 victims had accepted friend requests in the weeks before they vanished. The profiles all looked legitimate: local bands, venues, photographers, rescue organizations. But there was something off. The profiles had fewer than 20 friends, but somehow had mutual connections with dozens of people in the local scene. The photos looked professional but generic. The bands had demo tracks but no show history. The venues had addresses but no actual events. One victim's roommate would later tell investigators, she said this photographer had the same favorite bands as her. His profile looked totally normal. She thought it was cool that someone wanted to work with her. The profile looked normal because it was designed to look normal. The mutual friends were real. Someone had built credibility within the actual local scene first. The photos were stolen from legitimate portfolios. But nobody was looking at the code embedded in those profiles. Nobody was checking for tracking pixels. Nobody understood that accepting a friend request could turn your computer into a surveillance camera pointed directly at your daily routine. Reeves pulled the case files for all 4 victims, cross-referenced their MySpace activity in the weeks before they disappeared. The pattern was undeniable. Every victim had viewed multiple fake profiles. Every fake profile contained the same tracking code. Every tracking pixel pointed to the same external servers. A systematic surveillance operation disguised as social networking. The question was, who had the technical knowledge to build it? And more importantly, where were they now? The technical weapon, HTML trackers, explained. Reeves contacted the FBI's cyber division, explained what he'd found in the archived MySpace profiles. The tracking pixels, the external server domains, the systematic surveillance. The agent on the other end was quiet for a moment. Then, that's script kiddie stuff. You can set up a tracking server in 20 minutes with a YouTube tutorial. Could one person run this? One person could run 50 of these. The question is, why would they? The answer was in the methodology. Multiple fake profiles meant multiple tracking servers. Redundancy. If one server went down, the others kept logging. If one domain got flagged, backups existed. Reeves ran the domain registrations, all purchased through anonymous proxy services, all hosted on servers in Romania and Bulgaria, countries with minimal cooperation with U.S. law enforcement. Getting a warrant for foreign-hosted servers would take months, maybe years, and that assumes the hosting companies would comply. He framed it as an international cybercrime case. Unauthorized computer access, identity theft, potential human trafficking. The federal angle gave him leverage. 6 months of legal negotiations followed. Interpol got involved. The State Department applied diplomatic pressure. The hosting companies initially refused, then agreed to limited cooperation after the FBI threatened to blacklist their IP ranges. In late 2009, the server logs finally arrived. Over 40 gigabytes of data, spanning 2006 to 2007. The logs contained everything. IP addresses of every person who viewed the fake profiles. Timestamps, accurate to the second. Browser fingerprints. Screen resolutions. Reeves cross-referenced the data with the victims' known IP addresses, pulled from their ISP records with warrants. Every single victim had viewed at least one of the fake profiles in the weeks before they disappeared. But more importantly, one IP address appeared in the logs for all 4 victims. The same visitor had viewed every single target's profile in the days before they vanished. But to understand what that digital fingerprint meant, we have to go back to March 2007, to a woman named Rachel who was about to design her own death trap. Rachel was 22, graphic designer who'd moved to Olympia after art school. She designed custom MySpace layouts for other users. $50 for a basic design, $100 for something elaborate. Her profile was her portfolio. 49 friends, small network. Blog posts about struggling with rent, eating ramen to save money. Late-night login patterns. Her actual address listed in the contact section for commission inquiries. Every detail the algorithm needed. Risk score, 19. The highest priority target in the database. Bands and local businesses would browse her work, then commission her for their pages. In March 2007, someone contacted her about designing a layout for a local music venue. The message was professional. The budget was generous. The project sounded legitimate. Her sister remembers the phone call. She was excited about the exposure. She said if this went well, she could quit her day job at the print shop. They arranged to meet at a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi. Rachel brought her laptop to show mock-ups. The client wanted to discuss the aesthetic in person. She was last seen in the parking lot of a Borders bookstore in Olympia, carrying her laptop bag, walking toward a dark sedan. Her laptop was never recovered, but 6 months later, a hiker found her external hard drive in a ravine off Highway 101. Wiped clean. Every file deleted. Every sector overwritten. Except one. A corrupted file, 847 kilobytes, labeled Client Project Final.psd. Forensic examiners in 2007 couldn't open it. The file header was damaged. The data sectors were fragmented. They could see it was there, but not what it contained. What was Rachel working on in her final hours? And why did the killer leave this one file intact? While investigators were focused on physical evidence, tire tracks, witness descriptions, security footage, someone was evolving his methodology. He wasn't just tracking anymore. He was commissioning custom work to ensure victims spent hours studying his fake profiles, embedding themselves deeper into his surveillance network. The geographic spread widened. Victims were disappearing from Centralia to Federal Way, a 60-mile radius along the I-5 corridor. 4 more women vanished between April and June. The pace was accelerating. Reeves stared at the evidence timeline, seeing what investigators missed. The killer wasn't growing bolder. His database had grown. He had more targets to choose from. He could afford to be selective and spread the abductions across jurisdictions to avoid pattern recognition. The new victim profile was specific. Women who listed creative interests, photography, graphic design, music. People who were used to networking online, who expected to meet collaborators through social media. These were women who wouldn't think twice about meeting a photographer or venue owner they'd connected with on MySpace. It was how the scene worked. Online connections became real-world collaborations, and that trust was the weapon that killed them. The second wave, spring 2007. Between April and June 2007, 4 more women vanished from the I-5 corridor. The algorithm was getting faster, more efficient, the selection process more refined. Lauren, 23, new to Washington from California. Her MySpace asked for hiking recommendations around Mount Rainier. Small friend network, new to the area. Regular posts asking locals for advice. Someone with a profile called Pacific Northwest Trail Guide gave her detailed suggestions, GPS coordinates, trail difficulty ratings, an invitation to join a weekend hiking group. She told her roommate she'd finally found people who shared her interests. Her car was found at a trailhead near Ashford. Backpack still in the trunk. Water bottles on the passenger seat. Her phone on the dashboard, battery dead. The hiking group didn't exist. Risk score 17. Jennifer, 22. Studying network security at Pierce College. Learning about the very systems being used to hunt her. Late-night study sessions. Posts about job hunting. Small professional network she was trying to expand. A profile called Seattle Tech Meetup invited her to a networking event. Free pizza. Hiring managers from local companies. Great opportunity to break into the industry. She posted about it on her profile. Finally breaking into the industry. The co-working space address led to an empty storefront. No event, no witnesses. But here's what made her disappearance different. Her best friend logged into MySpace the next morning, sent her a message asking if she was okay. Jennifer's profile showed online now. The green indicator pulsed. Someone was logged in, reading that message in real time. For 3 days, someone kept logging into Jennifer's account, reading messages from worried friends, watching the panic spread through her network. Her friend checked Jennifer's sent folder, found messages she'd never seen before, sent to profiles neither of them recognized, all dated after she disappeared. She reported it to police. The lead went into a case file. Without a warrant, MySpace wouldn't release login data. The investigation stalled. Then the profile went dark. Risk score 17. Melissa and Katie followed within weeks. A music promoter offering $500 for a 40-minute set. A photographer promising professional headshots for an acting portfolio. 2 more women, 2 more risk scores above 15. 2 more entries in the spreadsheet marked eliminated. 4 women in 8 weeks, all selected by the same algorithm. But the killing hadn't started in April 2007. It had started 6 months earlier, by the time Brittany had her near escape in July 2007. The spreadsheet already contained 15 names. Sarah in October 2006. Amanda, Nicole, and Jessica through the winter. Rachel in March. Then the spring acceleration. Lauren, Jennifer, Melissa, Katie. 6 more women between those disappearances. Names that would later appear in the recovered files. Women whose stories followed the same pattern. Fake profiles, friend requests, messages promising opportunity. Cars found in parking lots with keys still inside. 15 women. 15 risk scores above 16. 15 entries marked eliminated. The investigation was drowning in cases. Too many victims. Too few leads. The real crime scene wasn't a parking lot or a trailhead. It was distributed across servers in Eastern Europe, and nobody was looking. Brittany, the one who almost escaped. But to understand how close investigators came to stopping him in 2007, we have to go back to July, to a woman named Brittany, who almost didn't make it home. By July 2007, 14 women had already disappeared. The spreadsheet was nearly complete. The algorithm had refined itself through 14 eliminations. Brittany was 21, worked as a waitress at a diner off I-5, saving money for a better camera. She spent her free time documenting abandoned buildings around Pierce County, old mills, closed schools, the decaying infrastructure of the lumber industry. Her MySpace profile was full of these photos. Rust and broken windows, and nature reclaiming industrial spaces. She had a small following of other urban exploration enthusiasts. In July 2007, she got a friend request from Pacific Ruins Project. The profile showcased professional quality urban exploration photography from across Washington state. Abandoned grain silos in eastern Washington. Closed mental hospitals near Spokane. Derelict fishing vessels in coastal towns. The profile had 43 friends, most of whom were also into abandoned places. Brittany recognized several names from local photography groups. She accepted the request. 2 days later, a message. Planning a shoot at an old paper mill near Eatonville this weekend. Your work is great. Want to collaborate? She almost went alone, but something made her ask her roommate to come along. Maybe intuition. Maybe just not wanting to drive that far by herself. They met him in the parking lot of a closed gas station off Highway 7. Mid-30s, average build, wearing cargo pants and a photography vest. He had professional equipment, a Nikon D80 with a telephoto lens, a camera bag with multiple lenses. He knew the terminology, talked about aperture settings and golden hour lighting, showed them photos on his camera's LCD screen from previous shoots. They hiked into the woods toward the old mill. The light was good near the entrance, late afternoon sun coming through broken windows, creating dramatic shadows. But he wanted to go deeper, said there was a better shot further in, where the main building had partially collapsed, into the shadows where the trees blocked the sun, where the road noise faded to silence. Brittany started to follow. Her roommate stopped walking. Later, she'd struggle to explain the feeling. The way his voice had changed when he said deeper. The way he'd positioned himself between them and the path back. The way the woods suddenly felt too quiet, too isolated, too far from anyone who could hear them scream. The light was already perfect where they were. There was no logical reason to go further into those trees. She grabbed Brittany's arm. We need to leave. Now. Brittany hesitated, but her friend's grip was tight, urgent. They walked back to their car, faster than they'd come. The man didn't follow, didn't call after them. Just stood there in the shadowed entrance of that collapsed mill, perfectly still, watching them through the viewfinder of his camera. Brittany could feel his gaze the entire walk back. The weight of being watched. The click of the shutter as he documented their escape. Brittany blocked the profile that night. 2 weeks later, she disappeared from her apartment complex parking lot. Early evening. Her car was still running. Groceries in the back seat. Keys on the pavement. Her roommate had taken a photo of the photographer's license plate with her Motorola Razr flip phone. Just a precaution. Something that felt smart at the time. The image was low resolution, compressed by 2007 cell phone camera technology. But 3 letters were visible: K, T, and possibly an R or P. The task force ran it through the DMV database. Over 2,000 vehicles in Washington state matched those partial letters. Without the full plate, the lead went nowhere. This case finally generated sustained media attention. MySpace photographer linked to string of disappearances ran in the Tacoma News-Tribune. 6 weeks of silence followed. No new victims, no new profiles. But the surveillance infrastructure stayed active, logging, updating, waiting. And on November 12, 2007, 4 months after Brittany's disappearance, a Pierce County patrol officer would pull over a dark blue Honda Accord for a broken taillight. The driver, David Keller, 34 years old, IT contractor, clean record. In the trunk, a laptop, 3 external hard drives, a Nikon D80 camera with telephoto lens, and a plastic tarp. Everything the task force was looking for. The officer wrote a fix-it ticket, let him drive away. The traffic stop report never made it into the task force briefing. And the system wouldn't stop hunting. Not when Keller was arrested, not when he was convicted. Not even when the servers were finally shut down in 2016. The algorithm would keep running, keep scoring, keep selecting targets, waiting for someone to check the spreadsheet. But by 2009, the trail had gone completely cold. Reeves stared at the server logs from late 2007, seeing the pattern shift. After Brittany's near escape and subsequent disappearance, the login activity changed. The IP addresses stopped appearing during the day. The library computers went silent, but the tracking pixels stayed active. The servers kept logging data. Someone was still accessing the network, just more carefully. The task force had come within seconds of identifying him. A license plate with 3 visible letters, a witness description, professional camera equipment, a specific location and date. But the investigation had nowhere to go. The parcel plate didn't match any vehicles registered to suspects in the database. The composite sketch was too generic. The camera equipment could belong to any of the thousands of photographers in Western Washington. And then the disappearances stopped. 6 weeks of silence, then 8, then 12. By October 2007, the task force started to dissolve. Resources were redirected to active cases. The files were marked cold. The families were told investigators would keep working the leads. But everyone knew what that meant. The cases went into storage. What nobody realized, the killer hadn't stopped. The killer went dark for 6 weeks. No new victims, no new profiles created, no new friend requests sent. But the tracking pixels stayed active. And in November 2007, a mistake would occur that nobody would notice for 2 years. A routine interaction that held the key to everything, if only anyone had looked closer. August 2007. Jessica's younger sister couldn't stop thinking about her. Jessica had been the 3rd victim, disappeared in December 2006. Community college student, studying photography, last seen after meeting someone from MySpace. The sister knew the password to Jessica's account. They'd shared it years ago, back when they'd help each other with homework and needed to access each other's files. She logged in looking for closure, reading old messages from friends who didn't know Jessica was gone, looking at photos from before everything changed, trying to understand what happened in those final days. She noticed something wrong in the inbox. Messages were missing. Conversations she remembered seeing when she'd logged in months ago were gone, deleted. Then she opened the sent folder. Messages she'd never seen before, sent to profiles she didn't recognize, all dated after Jessica disappeared. "Hey, thanks for the ad. Your photos are amazing. Sorry I've been MIA, been dealing with some family stuff. Definitely want to meet up when I'm back in town." Keller had been using Jessica's account, reading messages, deleting conversations, maintaining the illusion that she'd just moved away or was busy or had lost touch. She reported it to the police immediately. The detective who took the report was sympathetic, but explained the limitations. MySpace wouldn't release login records without a warrant. Getting a warrant required probable cause. The messages alone weren't enough. They could have been scheduled posts, or Jessica could have given someone access to her account before she disappeared. The lead went into the case file. Nothing came of it. The sister would later describe the feeling as watching her sister be erased twice. First from life, then from the internet. The digital ghost being puppeteered by whoever had taken her. But in August 2007, it was just another unanswered question in a growing list of mysteries. The Cold Case Revival, 2009. 2 years after the last disappearance, Detective Marcus Reeves found something in Sarah's archived MySpace profile that everyone else had missed. Line 847 of the HTML source code, buried between closing div tags, a single image tag, 1 pixel by 1 pixel, pointing to an external server domain, trackloganalytics.ru. Reeves had spent 5 years in the computer crimes unit before transferring to homicide. He knew what this meant. The kind of code marketing companies used to monitor email opens and website visits. Invisible to the human eye. But every time someone loaded the profile, their browser automatically reached out to fetch that tiny image. That connection logged everything: IP address, timestamp, location data, browser fingerprint. Sarah had been tracked before she was taken. He pulled the case files for all 15 victims, started checking their archived profiles using the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, a service that had crawled MySpace periodically between 2005 and 2008, capturing snapshots of millions of profiles. The archived pages were incomplete. Missing images, broken links, corrupted data. But the HTML source code was still there. Every single victim's profile contained the same tracking pixel, same code structure, different external server domains, but identical methodology. All 15 women, all tracked, all logged, all scored. Reeves had inherited 15 cold cases that nobody else wanted to touch. The task force had been dissolved. The media had moved on. The leads had dried up. But this wasn't a dead end. This was a live investigation. Someone had built a surveillance network. And the question now, were those servers still running? Reeves stared at his monitor, seeing the full scope of what had been hidden in plain sight for 5 years. The killer hadn't just been watching victims. He'd been watching everyone who stumbled across his digital traps. But Reeves remembered something from the case files. One of the victim's sisters had reported something strange 2 years ago. Someone had been using her sister's MySpace account after she disappeared, sending messages, deleting conversations. The lead had gone nowhere in 2007. MySpace wouldn't release login data without a warrant. The case wasn't prioritized. But now Reeves understood what it meant. The killer hadn't just been tracking victims before they disappeared. He'd been maintaining their digital presence after death, watching the investigation through their eyes. The question now, could he trace those servers back to whoever built them? But first, he found something that made his stomach drop. Buried in the case file, a routine traffic stop report from November 12, 2007. Officer Michael Torres, Pacific Avenue in Tacoma, dark blue Honda Accord, broken taillight, driver David Keller, clean record, IT contractor, given a fix-it ticket and sent on his way. Reeves stared at the date, November 12, 2007, 2 months after Brittany's disappearance. 2 months after the task force had circulated a composite sketch and a partial license plate. The plate Torres had logged, KTR 4729. The partial plate from Brittany's roommate's flip phone photo, KTR or P. They'd had him, right there, on Pacific Avenue in the rain. The vehicle description matched. The timeline matched. The equipment in the trunk, which Torres never checked, would have matched everything they were looking for, and they'd let him drive away. The systemic failure was complete. Torres worked night patrol. The detectives worked days. The digital investigators worked in a different building. The traffic stop report never made it into the task force briefing. Reeves closed his eyes, felt the weight of 2 years. 2 years where Keller was free, because different departments didn't talk to each other. But now he had a name, and a pattern, and a way forward. He traced the domain registrations, all purchased through anonymous proxy services, all hosted on servers in Eastern Europe, Romania, Bulgaria, countries with minimal cooperation with U.S. law enforcement. The technical challenge was obvious. He needed access to the server logs. But getting a warrant for foreign-hosted servers meant navigating international red tape. He contacted the FBI's cyber division, framed it as an international cybercrime case, unauthorized computer access, identity theft, potential human trafficking. It took 6 months, 3 federal agencies, and a threat to blacklist an entire country's IP range before the hosting companies cooperated. In late 2009, the server logs finally arrived. Over 40 gigabytes of data spanning 2006 to 2007. The logs contained everything. IP addresses of every person who viewed the fake profiles. Timestamps accurate to the second. Browser fingerprints, screen resolutions, referring URLs. Reeves cross-referenced the data with the victim's known IP addresses, pulled from their ISP records with warrants. Every single victim had viewed at least one of the fake profiles in the weeks before they disappeared. But more importantly, one IP address appeared in the logs for all 15 victims. The same visitor had viewed every single target's profile in the days before they vanished. He had found the killer's digital fingerprint. But before Reeves could start tracing those IP addresses, he found something else in the case files, something that made him realize just how close they'd been in 2007. Buried in the stack of old reports, a routine traffic stop report from November 12, 2007. Officer Michael Torres, Pacific Avenue in Tacoma. Dark blue Honda Accord, broken taillight. Driver David Keller, 35 years old. IT contractor, clean record. Given a fix-it ticket and sent on his way. Reeves stared at the date. November 12, 2007. 2 months after Brittany's disappearance. 2 months after the task force had circulated a composite sketch and a partial license plate. The plate Torres had logged, KTR 4729. The partial plate from Brittany's roommate's flip phone photo, KTR or P. They'd had him, right there, on Pacific Avenue in the rain. The vehicle description matched. The timeline matched. The equipment Torres noted in his report. Camera bag visible in back seat, laptop case on passenger seat would have matched everything they were looking for, and they'd let him drive away. The systemic failure was complete. Torres worked night patrol. The detectives worked days. The digital investigators worked in a different building. The traffic stop report never made it into the task force briefing. Reeves closed his eyes, felt the weight of 2 years. 2 years where Keller was free because different departments didn't talk to each other. But now he had a name, David Keller, and a pattern in the server logs, and a way forward. Reeves spent 3 days mapping IP addresses from the server logs. Libraries in Tacoma, coffee shops in Olympia, hotel business centers in Lakewood, FedEx office locations, never the same place twice, rotating through dozens of public access points across Pierce County. The killer had never used his home internet. He'd planned for the possibility of being traced. But on the 4th day, Reeves found an anomaly buried in the November 2006 logs. One residential IP address. Not a library, not a coffee shop, a house. Lakewood, Washington. Account holder, Margaret Keller, 62-year-old retired teacher. Reeves pulled property records. Margaret's house had a renter from 2005 to 2007. Basement apartment. The renter's name, David Keller. Her son. The traffic stop, the residential IP. The basement apartment during the exact years of the murders. Everything connected. Background check, web developer, network administrator, systems analyst. He had the technical skills to build the tracking system. The November 2006 login was the mistake. Early setup phase, before he'd perfected his operational security. Building the tracker network from his mother's basement. By late 2006, he'd gotten a job as overnight network administrator at a regional ISP. Access to professional infrastructure. An IT that rotated through thousands of business customers. After that, he never used his mother's internet again. One slip-up. November 2006. 3 years before Reeves would understand what it meant. But there was still one piece missing. Rachel's corrupted file. The evidence that had haunted him since he'd reopened these cases. Reeves pulled the evidence log one more time. Requested a final recovery attempt with modern forensic tools. The FBI's cyber division spent 3 weeks on it. Extracted fragments, but nothing complete. The technology still wasn't there. Reeves closed the folder. He'd solved this case without ever knowing what Rachel had been designing in her final hours. But he had David Keller's name. He had the pattern. He had the timeline. Now he needed to find him. But the server logs revealed something else. A junior analyst on Reeves' team noticed the timestamps didn't align with the victims' disappearances. According to the logs, the killer was viewing victim profiles during business hours, mid-morning, early afternoon. But the victims had disappeared late at night or in the evening. The pattern didn't make sense. The tracking servers were misconfigured. They were logging timestamps in UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, instead of Pacific Time. When corrected for the 8-hour time difference, everything aligned perfectly. Sarah's final bulletin at 11:47 p.m. Pacific. The log showed a profile view at 7:47 a.m. UTC, which was actually 11:47 p.m. Pacific. The exact minute she posted. Amanda's disappearance at 2 p.m. Pacific. The log showed 10 p.m. UTC, which was actually 2 p.m. Pacific. The moment she vanished. But the correction revealed something else. When Reeves analyzed all the profile views across all 15 victims, the activity clustered between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Pacific Time. Consistently, almost every surveillance login fell within that 2-hour window. Reeves pulled the evidence log one more time, requested a final recovery attempt with modern forensic tools. The FBI's cyber division spent 3 weeks on it. Extracted fragments, but nothing complete. The technology still wasn't there. Reeves closed the folder. He'd solved this case without ever knowing what Rachel had been designing in her final hours. But he had David Keller's name. He had the pattern. He had the timeline. Now he needed to find him. But the server logs revealed something else. A junior analyst on Reeves' team noticed the timestamps didn't align with the victims' disappearances. According to the logs, the killer was viewing victim profiles during business hours, mid-morning, early afternoon. But the victims had disappeared late at night or in the evening. The pattern didn't make sense. The tracking servers were misconfigured. They were logging timestamps in UTC, Coordinated Universal Time, instead of Pacific Time. When corrected for the 8-hour time difference, everything aligned perfectly. Sarah's final bulletin at 11:47 p.m. Pacific. The log showed a profile view at 7:47 a.m. UTC, which was actually 11:47 p.m. Pacific. The exact minute she posted. Amanda's disappearance at 2 p.m. Pacific. The log showed 10 p.m. UTC, which was actually 2 p.m. Pacific. The moment she vanished. But the correction revealed something else. When Reeves analyzed all the profile views across all 15 victims, the activity clustered between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Pacific Time. Consistently, almost every surveillance login fell within that 2-hour window. Reeves pulled Keller's employment records again. In 2006 and 2007, he'd worked as an overnight network administrator for a regional ISP in Tacoma. His shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The ISP's physical location was a server facility with 24-hour access. Keller had legitimate access to network infrastructure, which explained how he'd been able to mask his digital footprint so effectively. The server time skew revealed his real schedule. He was hunting during his overnight shifts, using the ISP's network to access his tracking servers, viewing victim profiles during his work hours when nobody else was around. Reeves had everything. Technical evidence, the traffic stop report, the residential IP, the employment records, and the timeline. He knew who the killer was, how he'd operated, and when he'd been active. But by 2009, Keller had moved. His last known address was a P.O. box in Portland, Oregon. No current residence on file, no employment records. He'd gone off the grid. What Reeves didn't realize yet, the server logs contained one more critical detail. Evidence that Keller hadn't just been tracking victims. He'd been tracking the investigation itself, monitoring every move law enforcement made, watching them get closer while staying 2 steps ahead. Buried in the server data was a profile Reeves hadn't seen in the original case files. Missing Friends Support Network. Created in December 2006, 2 months after Sarah's disappearance, the profile posed as a support group for families of missing persons in Western Washington. Professional layout. Resources for families. posted news articles about the disappearances, offered emotional support. The profile had friended Sarah's mother, Amanda's roommate, Jessica's sister, Nicole's co-workers. Families had accepted the friend requests, thinking it was a legitimate support organization. They posted updates about the investigation, shared which detectives were assigned, discussed what evidence police were examining, and every single visit was logged. Every post was read. Every investigative detail was monitored. The tracking pixels on this profile had logged visits from law enforcement IP addresses. Detectives checking the victim's friend lists had viewed this profile without realizing it was surveillance. Keller had embedded himself in the investigation, watching the hunters from inside their own network, and the MySpace pages had become something else by then. The archived screenshots from 2007 show profiles with broken image links, text that loaded in the wrong fonts, background music that played at half speed, distorting that indie track into something unrecognizable. Like the platform itself was infected. Digital rot spreading through the surveillance network. Reeves stared at the evidence, understanding the full scope of what they were dealing with. This wasn't just a serial killer. This was someone who'd turned the entire investigation into another data stream to monitor and analyze. The question now, how do you catch someone who's been watching you the entire time? Someone who'd turned the investigation itself into another surveillance feed. Reeves needed to draw Keller out. The suspect had been dark for 2 years, but those tracking servers were still live. He was still maintaining them, still paying the hosting fees. In early 2011, Reeves created a fake MySpace profile. He mimicked Keller's 2006 style, local photography collective, professional layout, stolen images from legitimate artists. But this profile had a difference. The tracking pixel pointed to an FBI server. The moment anyone viewed it, the Bureau would know. Reeves seeded the profile carefully. Friend requests to people in the old Tacoma scene. People who'd been connected to the victims' networks. Made it look organic, dormant for years, suddenly active again. Then he waited. 3 months of silence, no views, no activity. Reeves started to think Keller was gone for good. Maybe dead, maybe off the grid somewhere without internet access. Then on a Tuesday in April, the FBI server registered a hit. Someone had viewed the profile from a public library in Portland, Oregon. The library Showdown. The FBI coordinated with Portland police for physical surveillance. Unmarked cars around the library. Plainclothes officers inside, pretending to read newspapers. Reeves sat in an unmarked van across the street, laptop open, watching the real-time screen capture feed the FBI had set up on the public computer network. 2:17 p.m. Computer station number 7 logged activity. Reeves' heart rate spiked. This was it. 4 years of investigation. 15 families waiting for answers. A man sat down at the terminal. Mid-30s. Khaki pants, polo shirt, baseball cap pulled low. He navigated to MySpace. Reeves zoomed the screen capture feed. Watched the man's cursor move across the page. The trap profile loaded. The tracking pixel fired. Match confirmed. IP 207-241-116.89. Location, Multnomah County Library, Portland. Time, 14:17:34 PST. Station 7, Reeves said into the radio. His voice steady, professional. We have confirmation. Prepare to. The man closed the browser, stood up, walked toward the exit. Reeves was already out of the van, hand near his weapon, heart hammering. 2 plainclothes officers moving to intercept. This was David Keller. 4 years, 15 murders, walking toward the parking lot. The man turned, 22 years old, baby face, confused expression. Yeah? Can I see some ID? Student ID from Portland State. Wrong age, wrong profile. No connection to the case. Not him. Reeves got back in the van, hands shaking, the adrenaline dump making him nauseous. The FBI tech analyst's voice crackled through the radio. That profile had 847 views since we seeded it. Keller's been careful. He wouldn't click randomly. He's checking his logs first, then viewing profiles to verify they're legitimate. So we wait, Reeves said. 3 hours passed, then 5. Reeves watched the screen capture feed, tracking every visitor at every terminal. College students writing papers, homeless men checking email, teenagers watching YouTube. None of them Keller. The sun set. The library lights reflected on wet pavement. Was Keller even in Portland? Had he seen through the trap? The confession, the psychology of the digital predator. 5:43 p.m. Computer station number 4. A different man, late 30s, messenger bag, reading glasses. He navigated to MySpace, but didn't click the trap profile. Instead, he opened a different browser tab, typed a URL manually. Trackloganalytics.ru, the old tracking server domain. He was checking his logs first. Reeves leaned forward. The man spent 2 minutes reviewing data, then switched back to the MySpace tab, typed in a username. The trap profile appeared. The tracking pixel fired. This time, Reeves didn't move. He watched, waiting for confirmation. The man clicked through the profile, viewed the photos, read the About Me section, cross-referencing what he saw with the data in his logs, verifying the hit had registered, making sure it was legitimate. Reeves' hand moved to the radio. Station 4. That's him, moving to intercept. The suspect stood up, walked toward the exit. Reeves stepped out of the van, hand near his weapon, ready to make the arrest in the parking lot. The suspect stopped, turned around, sat back down at the computer. He continued browsing for another 20 minutes, viewing old profiles, checking his tracker logs, reading through victim accounts like he was reviewing a portfolio. Finally, he logged out, closed the browser, stood up, walked toward the exit. The arrest happened in the parking lot. No resistance, no drama. Just a 39-year-old man in khakis and a polo shirt, carrying a messenger bag, looking like any other library patron. David Keller, freelance IT consultant, living in a studio apartment in Portland, working remote contracts for small businesses. The search warrant was executed immediately. His apartment was sparse, minimal furniture, no decorations, just a desk with 3 monitors and a tower of external hard drives. The hard drives contained everything: the tracker logs, the spreadsheets, the GPS coordinates. Overwhelming evidence of 15 murders. Reeves had spent 6 years chasing this man. 6 years of sleepless nights, cold leads, and families waiting for answers. Now he sat across from him in a gray interrogation room, about to learn why. But David Keller wouldn't offer a confession or an apology. He offered a performance review. "I knew you'd find me eventually," Keller said. "I just wanted to see how long it would take." He'd been timing them, measuring the investigation's efficiency, treating the manhunt as another experiment to document and analyze. And when Reeves asked why he'd kept logging into the victims' accounts for 5 years, reading their mother's birthday messages, their friends' desperate pleas, Keller's answer was worse than any motive Reeves had encountered in 20 years of investigation. The confession would reveal that the murders weren't the experiment. The murders were just the data collection phase. What Keller was really studying was grief, and he'd been documenting it, minute by minute, for half a decade. The interrogation room was standard. Gray walls, metal table, recording equipment mounted in the corner. Reeves sat across from David Keller, a folder of evidence between them. Keller admitted to creating the tracker network immediately. No hesitation. He talked about it like a software engineer discussing a successful project. "I just wanted to see if I could do it." Building the system was the challenge. Reeves pushed the folder across the table. Server logs, timestamps, placing Keller viewing victim profiles hours before they disappeared. Tell me about the women. Silence. Then, those were accidents, variables I didn't account for. The language was what struck Reeves, not mistakes or things that went wrong. Variables. Like the victims were data points in an experiment. Reeves laid out photos. 15 faces. 15 missing women. 15 families waiting for answers. Keller was silent for a long moment. Then he started talking. He described the murders in technical terms: eliminating variables, optimizing the process, reducing risk factors. He talked about victim selection like he was debugging code, identifying inefficiencies, testing different approaches, iterating on the methodology. At one point, Reeves referenced the timeline for Sarah's disappearance. October 17, 2006, approximately 11:47 p.m. Keller looked up. No emotion, just correction. 11:43 p.m. The bulletin was posted at 11:43. The elimination occurred at 3:47 a.m. the following morning. Your timeline is inaccurate by 4 minutes. He said it the way you'd correct a typo in a spreadsheet. Clinical, precise, zero acknowledgement that he was talking about the moment he killed someone. His motive wasn't sexual, wasn't financial, wasn't revenge or rage or any of the typical drivers that investigators were trained to look for. It started as a data collection project. I wanted to see how much information I could gather using social engineering. The tracking pixels were just the first layer. But then I realized the data could predict behavior, where people would be, when they'd be alone, what they wanted to hear. So you killed them. I eliminated the ones who represented the highest value data points with the lowest risk factors. The psychological profile that emerged was disturbing in its clarity. Extreme compartmentalization. He viewed the victims as abstractions, not people. The murders were experiments. The bodies were disposal problems. The investigation was a performance metric. He kept the victims' profiles active after their deaths to monitor the investigation. Every condolence message from friends, every "where are you" post, every desperate plea from family members. He read them all, tracking how long it took for people to realize someone was missing, measuring the response times of law enforcement, calculating the effectiveness of his operational security. The ghost profile detail hit Reeves like a physical blow. The account from the cold open, the one that had been active every single day for 5 years, was Sarah's, victim 1, the 19-year-old barista who disappeared in October 2006. Keller had been logging into her account daily, reading messages from friends who thought she'd run away, watching her mother post birthday wishes every year, monitoring the memorial page her coworkers had created. He was watching her digital funeral in real time. Why keep logging in? To see how long it would take you to notice, to measure the investigation's effectiveness, to understand the patterns of grief and forgetting. Reeves had investigated dozens of homicides, gang violence, domestic murders, robberies gone wrong. He'd seen brutality, rage, desperation. But this was different. This was someone who'd turned murder into a research project, who'd quantified human life into spreadsheet columns, who'd watched families suffer and treated it as data. I knew you'd find me eventually. I just wanted to see how long it would take. The final statement wasn't a confession. It was a performance review. During the evidence analysis, forensic examiners recovered the file that would define the case. A spreadsheet titled Target Priority Matrix 2006 to 2007.xlsx. 62 names. 15 marked eliminated, with timestamps precise to the minute. Sarah, October 17, 2006, 3:47 a.m. Amanda, December 12, 2006, 2:14 p.m. Rachel, March 23, 2007, 11:28 p.m. Each victim scored between 16 and 19 on his risk assessment algorithm. Each elimination documented like a completed project milestone. The other 47 names were marked monitored or archived. Women who'd been tracked but never contacted. Scored, categorized, filed away. They were still alive because their risk scores weren't high enough. They'd failed to qualify for murder. The complete digital archive, forensic analysis of the seized hard drives, took 8 months. What they found was comprehensive documentation of a 5-year operation. Over 15,000 photos scraped from MySpace profiles. Detailed logs of victim movements. Coffee shop on Pacific Ave. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Hiking trail near Eatonville. Weekends when weather permits. He documented their routines like a surveillance team. But it was the personal details that made Reeves stop scrolling. Sarah's folder. Notes about her dream cafe. The corner space in downtown Tacoma. Saving tip money. Calculating shifts. She'd been 3 months away. Rachel's folder. Custom MySpace layouts. $50 each. 1 semester of freelance work from art school. Jennifer's folder. Network security coursework. Studying the very systems being used to hunt her. 15 folders. 15 futures quantified and eliminated. Dreams measured in dollars and semesters. Lives reduced to risk scores and timestamps. He documented what he was stealing, not just their lives, their potential. The deleted files were recovered using forensic imaging tools. Chat logs where Keller posed as different people to extract information from victims. Conversations where he built trust, established credibility, created the foundation for in-person meetings. The technical sophistication was evident throughout. He'd used virtual machines to compartmentalize his activities. Encrypted partitions to hide the most incriminating evidence. Secure deletion tools that had wiped most traces, but not everything. Forensic examiners always find fragments. The evidence that sealed the case came from GPS metadata embedded in photos. Keller had taken pictures at dump sites, documentation of his work, proof of successful elimination. He tried to strip the metadata before storing the files, but the deletion had been incomplete. Cross-referenced with victim remains discovered in 2012 and 2013, the dump site coordinates matched perfectly. Remote areas along I-5, Forest Service roads in the Cascade foothills, abandoned logging sites in the Olympic National Forest. But the photos weren't just of dump sites. Buried in a folder labeled Field Documentation 2007 were images taken at search parties. Volunteers combing through forests looking for missing women. Family members posting flyers at gas stations. Candlelight vigils in parking lots where victims were last seen. He'd been there, watching, photographing the aftermath of his work like it was performance art. The GPS coordinates placed him at 4 different search sites between March and August 2007. Standing among the volunteers, walking past the families, documenting their grief with the same camera he'd used to lure their daughters. The hard drives contained a complete archive of his operation, from initial target identification through tracking, selection, elimination, and disposal. Every stage documented, every decision logged, every variable accounted for. It was the most thorough self-incrimination in Washington state criminal history. But there was one file the forensic examiners couldn't explain. Not on Keller's hard drives. On the tracking servers themselves. Buried in the Romanian server directory structure. A Python script called autoupdate.py. Date uploaded October 2007. 1 month after the last disappearance. Reeves asked the FBI's tech analyst to explain what it did. It's a server-side scheduled task, the analyst said. Runs every 24 hours. Pulls data from the tracking pixel logs. Updates a database. Calculates risk scores automatically. So he didn't have to manually check it? No, He uploaded this to the servers in 2007, and it just kept running. As long as the hosting company kept the servers active, the script kept executing. If a new IP address appeared in the logs, someone viewing one of the fake profiles, it would automatically add them to the database. Calculate their risk score based on the algorithm. Update their status. Reeves stared at the code. Lines of Python he barely understood. How long would this run? As long as the hosting company kept the servers online, which they did, until we finally got them shut down in October 2016. So even after he stopped actively hunting, the system kept hunting for him. The algorithm didn't know the killer was in prison. It just kept running. The analyst scrolled through the execution logs, timestamps showing the script running every day for 9 years, October 2007 through October 2016. The last entry, October 15, 2016. 2 days before the FBI finally convinced the Romanian hosting company to terminate the accounts. It was still scoring targets 5 years after his arrest, Reeves said. Still scoring targets, the analyst confirmed. But one detail would prove critical for understanding his methodology. The metadata showed how long each target spent viewing his profiles. The 15 who died averaged 8 to 12 minutes per session. They studied his pages carefully, read through photo galleries, clicked on mutual friends to verify legitimacy. Their carefulness, the very trait that should have protected them, made them better targets. Because it meant his tracking pixels gathered more data, more timestamps, more behavioral patterns, more ammunition for his selection algorithm. But not everyone who was tracked ended up dead. Investigators contacted the other 47 names in the spreadsheet, the ones marked monitored or archived. They were all alive. None of them knew they'd been tracked. One was a woman named Claire, 23 years old in 2007, graphic design student, active in the local music scene. She sat in an FBI office in early 2012, looking at a printout of the spreadsheet with her name on it. Per entry, risk score 7, status archived, notes non-responsive to initial contact, low priority. She'd survived because she'd failed his algorithm. Too cautious, too suspicious, too connected. She hadn't scored high enough to be worth the effort. She remembered the friend request from Emerald City Records, the message that came 2 days later, offering $200 for a 2-hour album art modeling session. She'd stared at that message for 20 minutes, her cursor hovering over the accept button. Her rent was 3 weeks overdue. She'd been eating ramen for dinner to save money. $200 would solve everything. But something in the message felt calculated, too perfect, like someone had read her entire profile and engineered exactly what she needed to hear. She closed the browser instead. That hesitation, that moment of doubt, saved her life. But it also confirmed something investigators had suspected. The system was designed to filter for specific psychological profiles. Women who were too trusting, too isolated, too desperate for connection or opportunity. The trial, 2013. The prosecution's strategy: frame it as old-fashioned stalking with new tools. The defense argued the digital evidence could be manipulated. But 8 bodies had been found, all in locations matching GPS coordinates on Keller's hard drives. Perfect matches between digital evidence and physical reality. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on 15 counts of first-degree murder. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Life without parole on each murder count, to be served consecutively. The judge's statement was brief. You treated human beings as data points. You will spend the rest of your life as a number in the prison system. One moment from the sentencing stayed with everyone in the courtroom. Sarah's mother was given the opportunity to address Keller directly. She stood at the podium, hands shaking, looking at the man who'd killed her daughter, and then logged into her account every day for 5 years. You stole her from the internet before you stole her from us, You erased her twice, once from life and once from the place where she'd built her identity and her friendships. You watched us grieve. You read our messages. You saw our pain and you treated it like research data. Keller showed no reaction, just sat at the defense table, expression blank, looking at nothing in particular. He was transferred to Washington State Penitentiary the same day. The families unified around a single statement. He turned our daughters into numbers. We're here to remind everyone they were people. But the most disturbing evidence wouldn't emerge until 2014, 5 years after Reeves first stared at that corrupted file and realized he couldn't open it. In 2014, forensic technology finally caught up. The data from Rachel's hard drive could be recovered. The file contained a partially completed MySpace layout design, custom HTML, CSS styling, embedded media players, professional quality template work for a photography collective profile. It was the profile Keller had commissioned her to create, the same profile he'd used to hunt her. She'd been designing the trap that caught her, pixel by pixel, unaware that the client reviewing her work was planning her murder. MySpace shut down custom HTML embedding in 2008, not for security, for competition with Facebook. Congress held hearings. Tech executives testified. New legislation required reporting systems and law enforcement cooperation. But the fundamental problem remained. Platforms are built to connect people, and predators will always find ways to exploit that connection. The families became advocates, testified before state legislatures, pushed for laws requiring platforms to monitor predatory patterns. Some states passed legislation, most didn't. Tech lobbying won. Irony compounded tragedy. The same privacy protections that could have saved their daughters were being used to protect platforms from accountability. Detective Reeves retired in 2015. 6 years on the case. From cold case revival to conviction. 15 families finally had answers. The tracker network went offline on October 17, 2016, exactly 10 years after Sarah's murder. The hosting companies terminated the accounts. The domains were blacklisted. Case closed. October 2016. An FBI analyst was performing one last check of the Romanian servers before they were destroyed. Routine evidence cleanup, making sure nothing critical had been missed. Then she opened the execution logs for autoupdate.py. The script had run yesterday and the day before that, and every single day since October 2007. 5 years after Keller's arrest, the algorithm was still running, still pulling data from the tracking servers, still calculating risk scores, still hunting. And on October 15, 2016, 2 days before the servers were shut down, the spreadsheet had added one more name. Row 63. A woman in Tacoma who'd never heard of David Keller, who'd never heard of the MySpace murders, who'd just been browsing old profiles for nostalgia. Her risk score, 19. Status, priority target. When the FBI analyst discovered this autonomous system, still running 5 years after the killer's arrest, they found one entry that nobody had noticed during the trial. The spreadsheet had been updated automatically, pulling data from the servers right up until they were terminated. 2 days before the servers were shut down, 5 years after Keller's arrest, 10 years after the first murder, the algorithm had been running itself, scoring targets, waiting for someone to act on the data it collected. She was contacted by FBI agents in late 2016 during the final evidence review. She didn't remember viewing that profile, didn't know she'd been the last name added to a killer's spreadsheet. She's alive, she's safe, but her data is still in those archived logs, forever marked as a priority target by an algorithm that couldn't tell the difference between 2006 and 2016, between an active serial killer and a system running on autopilot. The digital footprint never dies, the surveillance never stops, and somewhere in a server farm in Eastern Europe, there might be another algorithm running on another abandoned platform, scoring another target waiting for someone to check the spreadsheet. If you want to see how modern platforms learned from MySpace's mistakes, or didn't, watch this next.